1863, 50% of the population of Grenada was living in caves.
Yes.
That can't be true.
That's amazing. Honest to God. I don't know about you, but I'm in the mood for a bloody good podcast. Hello guys and welcome to Hispanophiles Travel in Spain with only half a brain, the sweetest churro in the entire packet. In this episode we'll be jumping back in that time machine, going further in the past than we ever have done before and never will do again, because today we are looking at the arrival of prehistoric humans in the Iberian Peninsula. Who were they, when did they arrive, and what was their life like? But first we need to say hello to our host of the episode, and today we're going full toxic masculinity. It's the British lads in the house. We've got Alex back. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, James. Thank you for inviting me back after our pod a couple of weeks ago. Loved it.
Pleasure's all mine.
And also, you've actually improved on the location. Well, I wouldn't say improved, it's diversified. Diversified on our location. I love it. Especially the first thing that caught my eye, glittery gold trophy.
I'll put some B-roll of that trophy inside it. Would you like to tell the story of what it is?
So long story short, for my 30th birthday, I did a fancy dress competition for a party of mine. Obviously, he turns up here by far in the best outfit. James walking down the street dressed as Marge Simpson. And I'd created this trophy for whoever would be the best dressed, of course. Bought some glitter, some gold, sprayed the hell out of it. And yeah, we celebrated. We gave it to you. The crowd clapped for him. Wow. Everybody loved him. And even 3 years later, people keep talking to me about Marge Simpson at the party.
Very good.
It's relevant because it's somewhat of a relic now.
Very good. Yeah.
It's a 90s Oscar. Now, that was the vibe. It is one of my favourite possessions here. So.
Oh, yeah? Oh, that makes me very happy.
We are recording in my house today. Slight problem with the reservation of the usual studio, so we will see how the audio quality turns out. We've also got Big Boy Max, Tom Jones's illegitimate son. How are you, sir?
Representing Wales. Thank you for inviting me to lose my podginity. Very happy to be here with you and Alex, James. So happy to crack on with whatever is on the agenda today.
You know what they say, you never forget your first time. So I hope it's a special one for you.
It's a lot of pressure, right?
First time out of the house.
Oh, really?
We'll go gentle.
Okay.
And if you need to cry at any point, if it's a little bit too much too soon, you can let us know, and I'm sure I've got some Kleenex, so
that's absolutely fine.
Never mind.
I think I see something in the corner of your bed, actually.
Moving swiftly on, shall we jump into a regular segment?
Let's do it. Yeah. Let's do it. Well, I gave a little bit of I've been reading a little bit recently, and some of the big discussion these days is, I don't know if you know this, but the Spanish government is proposing to the Commission, Parliament, Council of Europe to make Basque, Galician and Catalan official European languages. I think it's actually happening tomorrow. There's going to be a vote, and of course all 27 Euro states need to confirm if they will officially allow those 3 languages, I should say, to become an official EU language. Obviously they have to do it because Sanchez is being a little bit pushed from a political aspect by Puigdemont and the Catalan independents. They want to have their language represented, and I respect that.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Max here will support that.
100%. I'm behind everything, especially as a Welshman, so propagating native local languages is something I'm very passionate about.
Very good.
As a Welshman.
But they are already recognised language inside Spain.
Yeah.
So this recognises them by the EU Commission, by the EU Council.
And the European Parliament. So anytime there's any official discussions at any of those chambers, if this gets passed, then yeah, they will have to have official translators for those languages. So more jobs for the local Catalans.
So we need to find some Basque translator who can type up every single minute when it comes to legislation being passed through about the size of kippers that can be fought, that can be on the North Sea.
This is it.
That should be easy to find.
Or they could leave it. They could just leave it and get 350 million quid for every week for their local health society. But
free Brits living in Spain, but not that we're bitter at all about the legal situation.
No, thoroughly enjoyed that.
We don't care how you guys voted Brexit, if you did at all, as long as you're not a cunt. Thank you very much, Alex.
Okay, cheers, Alex. Nice one.
Shall we move into Spanish vocabulary?
I've got a little story that I wanted to bring in just because it's one close to home.
Let's do it.
Spain has finally fined budget airlines, including Ryanair, because for a long time they've been getting away with cavalier practices, and Spain have fined them 179 million.
Oof.
euros. So that's 149 million pounds for various abusive practices, such as charging up to 90 euros for hand luggage.
Goddamn disgrace, that.
Unforgivable. Also, Vueling Norwegian and Volatia were issued with sanctions, but the main one was towards Ryanair, which if anyone has flown from UK to Spain at any point, even into Girona, which is a little bit cheaper, it is a nightmare.
Have you ever flown to Girona?
I flew in by accident.
I
First time I was here 10 years ago,
Yeah.
I actually flew in by accident. I was like, because it used to just say Barcelona, Girona.
Yes.
So when you're a small town Welshman, I was like, I guess that's Barcelona. Didn't know it was like a 50-minute train.
Pop down the co-op for a loaf of brown bread and end up in Girona by
Suddenly I
accident.
was in Girona, yeah. Got to see some Salvador Dali though, so that's all good.
So, Spain specifically,
Yes.
Spanish government is taxing Ryanair.
Yes,
Okay.
they're not letting them get away.
For cavalier practices.
Cavalier practices, particularly with carry-on luggage and seat selection, asking for a disproportionate amount, to quote the article, and even charging to print boarding passes.
I got done by that once. I was fuming, absolutely fuming.
That is very...
Yeah, I was really like, because I couldn't check in, they had a glitch, and then I didn't screenshot it for whatever reason. So I went in the morning, and they're like, no, there was no glitch. And I was like, I promise you, there's a glitch. You have to pay 40 euros or whatever it is to print a boarding pass. I was
Wow.
like, oh, guys, you're joking.
For an A4 piece of paper.
I know, but
Okay.
I still fly with them because they get me in with their $9.99 flights,
Yes.
don't they? So, you know.
People who work in marketing. Ugh, let's get rid of them all.
Exactly.
So, basically, some of Ryanair's practices have been deemed as predatory or hawkish or abusive or...
Both could be described as that.
Okay.
Abusive is the word that's thrown around, although Ryanair boss Michael O'Leary did, as he normally does, come out and say the fines were baseless and illegal.
That's the thing, is Ryanair, a huge company, always they have a huge legal team who look into opportunities they can exploit.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I'm not one here to defend Ryanair. I'm here to play devil's advocate. He's probably got something to that. Like there is, a little grey loophole they thought they were making smart use of, and they say, we have to find ways to increase, revenues somehow.
Yeah.
Though it is nice to see Ryanair get shafted. However, 179 million euros.
179 million, and for clarity, the charge for printing a boarding card was up to 20 euros. This is insane, but there we go. Spain are on the case.
Very good.
One of the main countries to actually take it to Ryanair and the budget.
Very good. Thank you very much, Max.
Yes.
Let's move on to Spanish vocabulary. Alex, have you got something tasty for us?
I do. I thought this word is especially appropriate for you, especially after the last time, and I saw all your egg boxes because you produced so much carbonara because of all your successful dates you've been having. So I learned
With the same woman.
with the same very lucky woman. I learned the word zalamero. Zalamero. So, from my understanding, and I may have to just double Google this, it's somebody who's a bit of a smooth talker. So let me it's somebody who's got a bit of the gift of the gab, so to speak.
Can you spell it for me?
I can. Zalamero. L is una zalamero.
Salamero.
So
It sounds more Italian. Or maybe that's just because it has a Z in the
that's just my very international accent. I'm just like a multi-talented lingual kind of guy.
Man of the world here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alex Popolo.
Tones as well. Nice knowledge.
Salamero, a silver-tongued
Yes.
cap.
You pronounce it so much better. You see, the proof is in the pudding. The guy already says it like he knows it. He's like
Spanish is I'm envious in Spanish. I can't even speak English now.
Try to crack out the Welsh, it's all right.
This is okay. To Siarad Cymraeg.
There we go. That's cool as that.
There you go. Yeah. Everyone can listen from Wales and then realise doing dysgu and Cymraeg. I need to learn more Welsh again because I'm forgetting since trying to learn Spanish.
Max, have you got some Spanish vocab for us?
I've got a couple of funny ones, actually, but the main one I liked, because we don't have this word in the English vocabulary, is manco or manca, depending on masculine or feminine, and it means a one-armed person.
Oh, I can hear that.
Manco.
Manco or manca, yeah.
Right.
We have words that come close, but most of them are derogatory in English. So this is a lovely word to describe someone with one arm.
I'm even trying to think of a derogatory word in English for it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. In English, what, armless? He's armless.
Is that derogatory?
Not really. It's all puns in the pub, isn't it? Like he's going to have trouble joining the army. There's loads
I've never heard that one before.
Yeah.
So then we would just politely say, as you do, if you want to point someone out who doesn't have an arm.
Yeah.
Manco.
Él es una...
Manco or manca.
Well, él es un manco. I won't be saying that anytime soon, but still interesting to know.
So if you're a manker, you must be an inefficient wanker then, I guess.
That's,
It's a lot more difficult. Two-handed will be impossible. This is the thing.
Two fantastic words, manco and un zalamero.
I want to see them together. Can you make them like the smooth-talking one-armed man?
Ayer conocí a un manco y la verdad, este tío era un zalamero.
Bueno, excelente.
Muy bien, eh?
Unfortunately, he was already taken, so my advances were rebuffed, but never mind. Gentlemen, awesome vocabulary. My hat is off to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James.
Shall we progress with the main talking point of the episode?
Yes.
Okay. Would like to start with a little pre-prepared introduction to the topic. In 1879, the Cantabrian naturalist Don Marcelino Sanz de Satuola y Perdueca, that is his real name, took his daughter Maria to visit the caves of Altamira, some 20 kilometres to the west of his hometown, Santander, on the north coast of Spain. While absent-mindedly looking through the cave, he heard his daughter shouting excitedly, "Look, Papa, bulls!" Satuola walked over and looked up in astonishment to see the unmistakable outline of a great Iberian bull, painted in vivid red, on the wall of the cave. The more the pair looked around, the more they saw paintings of bulls, bison, deer. Satuola was a man of science, and he was astounded by what he discovered. Not only were these cave paintings the oldest ever discovered in the world, but they also suggested the presence of a social, intelligent, human-like being in Europe far longer than had previously been believed by the scientific community. The cave paintings of Altamira were approximately 25,000 years old.
Wow.
But the scientific community first mocked Don Marcelino Sanz de Satuola, claiming he'd either been hoodwinked by what he had seen, or that he fabricated the evidence entirely. It was only when one of his critics visited Altamira and saw the cave paintings for himself that the scientific community accepted Satuola's conclusions. Though the caves of Altamira now do not hold the oldest prehistoric cave paintings we know of, France takes the honour, with some cave paintings dated back 30,000 years ago, they remain a cornerstone of our understanding of prehistoric human activity in Europe. None other than Pablo Picasso remarked, "None of us could paint like that. After Altamira, all is decadence."
Wow. Quick question, if I may.
Please.
What is how do you define prehistoric? When is historic?
My understanding is sometime around the agricultural revolution, 15,000 years ago, which we'll come to in a second.
Yeah.
That is effectively the dawn of human civilization. It's a tricky word to use in intellectual debate because it carries some baggage. Calling some people civilized implies that others aren't, which has come a little bit pejorative nowadays to say someone is uncivilized. But generally, anything before the dawn of people deliberately planting seeds to grow more food in one set location can be considered prehistoric, in my understanding. Max, do you have a different interpretation?
I don't, actually. I think you've articulated it extremely well, almost verbatim to the definition.
So what you're referring to is people when they were foraging before it became more like industrial farm.
Yes, exactly. Hunter-gatherers, that sort of thing. Yeah. No written language, no individual organisation of labour, that is to say professions and jobs. What you can find, what you can hunt.
Foraging.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So that's a good place to start. I think to understand the arrival of human beings in the Iberian Peninsula, we need to have a quick summary of the human hominid evolution over the course. And I will try and be as brief as I can with this, because there is a lot of notes. Before I begin, the dates I will be referring to and the research for this section came from Jeremy Black's book, Brief History of Spain, Ian Morris's work, Why the West Rules for Now, one of my favourite history books of all time, and the Crash Course YouTube Big History series by Hank and John Green, of which I have been an avid listener for over 10 years now.
Very good.
Okay. So, boys, question for you. What are your experiences of Homo erectus?
I think one of the interesting things about Homo erectus was a totally wild theory. I don't know if this is going off-piste a little bit, but back in my academic days, about how Homo erectus developed the frontal lobe. Is that too inappropriate for this point in time?
Get out there. Get out there.
Love a big lobe.
Well, it's called the stoned ape theory. I don't know if you've heard of the stoned ape theory. But basically,
I've seen it down a Raval a few times.
But essentially, the stoned ape theory hypothesizes that one of the key cornerstones in human evolution of the frontal lobe and higher cortical and social thinking was because of our discovery of psilocybin via magic mushrooms. Psilocybin being the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, for those who don't know. And they think that among our foraging, we came across the magic mushrooms, and that was where early evidence kind of correlated with with greater social cohesion in areas such as Georgia and that kind of region in
The
Europe,
Caucasus.
the Caucasus. The hypothesis came because there was a significant rise in social cohesion. The theory was that it was to do with the propagation of magic mushrooms in the place.
And when you
Interesting.
say social cohesion, do you mean groups of Homo erectus working together as opposed to being individualistic fighting? Just I want what I want, actually
Exactly.
forming a group. Is that
Exactly, larger groups. So say they were walking around at that period, and again, my knowledge is rusty, but say they're going around in tribes of between 50 to 100. There was tribes of up to 300 to 400 during that period.
Oh, wow. Interesting. And
And one of the reasons they said is they had the common goal, and this is where the philosophy of religion and evolution of religion can come in as well.
The obvious question, therefore, is has somebody conducted similar experiments with other primates, other apes, giving them psilocybin, and then have they exhibited the same behaviors, i.e.,
No.
chimpanzees? Okay.
No, it's still considered unethical.
What, to give some apes some magic mushrooms?
They're struggling to test it on humans,
Yeah.
and because of various animal rights groups, it's unethical to give something so close to humans, psilocybin, in controlled trials at the moment.
That's crazy to think about. I mean, the stuff we do to animals and that we can't.
They can test on mice and rats
Yeah.
and these things, but yeah, when it comes to anything close to a human, like a primate, it's deemed scientifically unethical.
Because they are considered more highly intellectual and therefore they can suffer pain to a greater extent?
Exactly.
Or because they are more like endangered than rats?
I think the research is, and again, this might just be my own armchair hypothesis, kind of amalgamating what I've learned on it, but because primates have a more advanced autonomic nervous system, they're more predisposed to anxiety and greater effects should they have a bad trip on mushrooms than rats, which don't display. Hence, they've tested cocaine and various other drugs.
That's true. I've seen that in the apes. They can get very stressed.
They get
very violent.
Don't want to risk that.
And that is an accurate depiction of what would happen.
Yeah, I would love to watch that rewrite.
This is
or the prequel.
I think we could do it.
Boys might in idea. We watch that film. We get high as God knows what, and we see how we react.
And I should say on that, if anyone wants to read about it, it's the great writer Terence McKenna. That was his controversial hypothesis proposed in relation to psychedelic mushrooms and the propagation of Homo erectus.
Very good. Okay.
Fascinating. There we go.
It's a bit of a difficult question. Where does what we can consider human behaviour begin? But by 4 million years ago, we can be sure that primates in East Africa were bipedal, i.e. walking on two legs. That was Australopithecines, about a metre tall, otherwise very, very similar to the apes living back then. So teeth designed to eat plants that they could find foraging, mostly quite hairy, and would still be living quite a lot inside trees, with brain size similar to chimpanzees that we see today.
Okay.
The first genus that I believe carries the name Homo was Homo habilis, which translates roughly as the handyman. Why? That is because this is the first evidence we see of the Homo genius using deliberately crude tools in a way that is not just picking up a stick, but taking something and refining it. So, for example, taking a piece of flint and deliberately smashing it to have something that is sharper and easy to cut with.
So we literally would engineer it then?
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
First time.
First engineering, yeah.
We believe Homo habilis emerged in East and Central Africa about 2.5 million years ago. They walked upright. Their brain capacity was bigger than that of the Australopithecines, about 630 cubic centimeters. We have evidence of their existence in Asia, so they clearly migrated, but we haven't, to the best of my knowledge, found any signs of Homo habilis in Europe.
Okay.
The next to discuss, and these are the ones that did migrate quite a lot, were Homo erectus and Homo ergaster. Homo erectus being upright man, Homo ergaster being working man.
Okay.
So these emerged approximately 1.7 million years ago, though some people believe about 2 million years ago, so not too much later than Homo habilis. A lot of skeletons found in Africa and Asia. It's not clear which came first, to the best of my knowledge. It's also not clear how they branched away from each other. So they're kind of brother and sister in many ways. They came, I believe, from Homo habilis, were different species, but around about the same time. These may have been, and this isn't clear, but there's evidence to suggest that these deliberately started fire to cook meat. With regards to survival, what is the advantage of fire and cooking meat?
So, cooking and preparing meat would help develop the microbiome and, in turn, improve the digestive system. And there's a correlation between fire, cooking meat, and developing social skills. Also, people coming together, social cohesion, communication over food.
I mean, obviously, cooking the fire it makes it able to be able to eat it, no?
Yes, but the main thing is it increases the calorific content of what you're eating. So if you cook something, the same reason why if you eat a cold salad, you don't ingest that many calories, and it's a good way to lose weight. So when you cook something, you actually allow more calories to be digested, which gives you more energy and therefore ability to work.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
So wait, let's
apparently
say if we have 2 pieces of steak, and if I cook one well done and one medium rare, is that the one that's well done would be more calorific?
In theory, yes, that is my understanding.
Interesting.
I would like maybe a chemist can write in and explain this to me.
Okay, fair.
It's not clear. We're not certain Homo erectus and Homo ergaster cooked, but we definitely know that Homo Antecessor did. Now, this is where Spain becomes relevant in the conversation. Homo Antecessor, translating as ancestral man.
Okay.
Now, Homo erectus and Homo ergaster are like our cousins. I believe we evolved from Homo Antecessor. It arrived 900,000 to 800,000 years ago. And this is the first example that we see in Spain, the Sierra de Atapuerca, which we'll be discussing shortly. We see fossilized bones from Homo Antecessor 850,000 years ago.
850,000 years
Yes,
ago.
850,000. That's how long we see Homo Antecessor. The first ever discovery of a Homo Antecessor skeleton was in Spain, in the Sierra de Atapuerca. So this is one of the Spanish scientific community's contributions to the world, or to our understanding of human evolution.
I wonder how the Catholics feel about that.
I think the ones that really gave a shit are dead now, I think.
Yes.
But, yeah.
I'm sure they're still around. Some of them are still around.
Yeah.
I think 850,000 years, that's mind-blowing when you actually think about the length of time that actually is. And the Bible says 2,000 years, but yeah.
So it's confirmed these are the guys that could be on all fours. They'd already made tools, like on fours, and now they're cooking.
Yeah, so bipedal, 1,000 cubic centimeter brain capacity. So these are pretty much double the brain size of Australopithecines, which are the first walkers. A skull shaped very similar to Homo erectus, so we start kind of seeing the roundness that allows for a bigger brain capacity forming.
Yeah.
And we first see here what we can describe as a collective culture of learning and technology. So Homo habilis, as we discussed, would take a rock and deliberately smash it to get a finer rock. It appears that Homo Antecessor would tinker with tools in a different way, slimming them down, specializing, and making the first composite tools, which means applying 2 different materials to make one thing. The best example, a long piece of wood, a sharp, pointy rock at the end, you tie a rope around it, you make a sphere.
It's amazing.
So the first time we see culture emerging, where people deliberately take knowledge from the previous generation, experiment with themselves, test it, and then pass that down.
Innovation.
And I wonder, were social hierarchies and cooperation, were they exhibited at this point? Were we starting to have social hierarchies and an awareness of that?
So social hierarchy, yes. The Homo Antecessor was not capable of speech in the same way we do, because one of the Homo sapiens superpowers is the high larynx, which means we can vocalize. We can make an incredible array of vocalizations. Without such an ability to speak, of course, Homo Antecessor would not have had such an ability to delegate tasks and organize that sort of thing. But as we still see in chimpanzees, in gorillas, we see their ability to organize and have hierarchies in that sense. So all of these, generally speaking, were social creatures rather than solitary, because none of the Homo genus. What's the plural of genus?
Genus.
Genus. We'll go with that.
I think
early humans.
Thinking of Ross on Friends. This is homogeneous.
Definitely Homo erectus there.
This is.
Then comes the 2 that we're kind of more familiar with, and the 2 that we think of when we think of early humans. Go ahead.
Neanderthal.
Yes, that is one of them.
Homo sapien.
No, that is us. There's another one between Homo Antecessor and Homo and Neanderthal. I'll give you a clue. It's the suffix is named after a German city, a German town. Quite a pretty one.
Quite a pretty one.
Yeah. So not Homo Berlinus.
Homo in Frankfurt. Okay, it's not.
Not Frankfurt.
Hamburg. No. Homo Hamburg.
Homo Hamburger.
Cologne.
You're not actually far away. Homo Cologne.
Dusseldorf, Cologne. No.
Hominic.
Wasn't it?
Homo Heidelbergensis. Homo Heidelbergensis comes 500,000 years ago, very successful at migrating. So Homo erectus and Agaster, over the course of their life, I didn't say Homo erectus, I think, was the most successful Homo genus ever in terms of length of
living
on the planet Earth, yes. But Homo Heidelbergensis, where we've found skeletons in Europe, Africa, Asia, they were very, very good at migrating, larger brain size than Homo erectus, just shorter than us. So I think around 150, 160, 170 centimeters, which is not too short than me, but never mind.
Talk for yourself, mate.
They also moved very well into colder climates, which implicates certain things. Now, I believe the earliest fossil remnants we have of clothing lice go back to 50,000 years ago, which suggests that Homo sapiens first started wearing clothing about 50,000 years ago. But the fact that Homo heidelbergensis was able to live in Ice Age Europe effectively does imply in some way they would cover their bodies to protect themselves from the cold. They were hairyless, they were more muscular, like the Neanderthals will come to in a second. But
did they speak German?
They probably sounded like the sort of drunk person you do find at 2 a.m. in Kreuzberg in Berlin, you know. Though I don't think the German language was codified by then. I might be wrong.
No, you probably
we'll have to consult our rival podcast, Germanophiles, to see what they research.
I hate those guys.
Go and subscribe from them straight away. And then we come to the Neanderthals. The first everyone discovered in Germany, in the valley of Neander, as the Tal is the German word for valley, in 1856.
That's where it comes from.
Yeah, the Neander Valley, Neanderthal.
Did not know that. Maybe.
They are believed to be a genetic adaptation from Homo Antecessor. They lived around 200,000 years ago, 160,000 according to the Museo de la Evolución Humana in Burgos, which I'll come to later on, and they spread pretty much across Europe. So Homo Antecessor and Heidelbergensis were more global. Neanderthal seem to have been adapted more for very cold Ice Age Europe. Do you have a point?
No, I just found it interesting when reading about the Neanderthals in relation to the Iberian Peninsula, that sites such as Gibraltar, Gorham's Cave.
Tell me more.
Don't have you probably got more information than me, but I just found it fascinating that in Gorham's Cave, it contained evidence of Neanderthal remains as far as 25,000 years ago.
Which is?
It's actually the site of the youngest Neanderthal remains.
Go.
Yep.
The youngest, as in like a baby Neanderthal?
Not in terms of age, in terms of the most recent historically. The closest Neanderthal that died to us today, that skeleton was preserved in Gibraltar.
Wow.
So we found Neanderthals in other places, but the youngest ones in terms of how recent they died, that was Gibraltar 25,000 years ago, apparently.
So now they're technically British. I hope that's not controversial.
Could explains quite a lot, I think.
Okay.
You guys might be aware of this. 1 to 4% of all human DNA is Neanderthal DNA, which suggests what, gents?
We're all rather inbred.
There we go.
Being Welsh.
You relate?
Yes. Because our DNA is actually as high as 36% in common with Neanderthal. That could be bro science completely. I'd like to keep it on top.
Well, they're named after a valley, so this makes sense, you know?
Yeah, and if you've been to the valleys, you can still go back in time.
You know what you need? You need one of those apps. They've got an app in Iceland where it's so small and inbready that they have an app that with your surname, you can check if you're meeting some bird on a night out. You're like getting on with it. You're like, oh, well, let's see where we go with this. And you're like, oh, shit, she's actually my second cousin.
Yeah, see, we have that in Wales, but it's the opposite effect. They encourage that. So you want to rule in whether someone's related to you to propagate. Yeah, exactly. To propagate your genes.
What do you call it? Neandertinder or something?
You call it Tincest, mate.
There we go. We've got the...
Very good. That's worth a like and subscribe, guys. We hope you're enjoying this episode. If you are, consider giving a like, writing a comment, following, subscribing, giving us a high rating, all that jazz. You don't have to, but it would help us out with the algorithm in the place where you listen to your podcasts. Thank you very much, and let's get back to the episode. Neanderthal is kind of what we think of when we think of proto-humans. What do you guys know about their physiology, their appearance? what they look like? What do you guys know?
I mean, I'm assuming they're rather kind of like not the same skulls as us, because I don't think their brains were as big as us. No, they wasn't so like there's more frontal lobe.
Yes, okay. So very strong brow, first and foremost. Weaker chin than us, sloping forehead, larger noses, larger front teeth. But with regards to brain size, Neanderthals had larger brains than Homo sapiens do. They were not stupid. They had burial rites, maybe implies religion or spiritual belief as well. Again, as we've seen, they had artistic endeavors. They invented clothing. We're very sure of that. But the reason we're not as intelligent as us, because the rounder shape on top of the Homo sapiens skull means that the top part of the brains, and I don't know neurology that well, but the top part of the brains that are more closely associated with abstract thought, I think complex memory holding and verbal reasoning and speech are more developed with us, which gives us a greater intellect in sight over smaller capacity brain. So that's my understanding.
Because their brain structure emphasised different functions, so visual and motor skills, which would have been better for survival in those days than things such as abstract reasoning, as you mentioned.
But they were incredibly muscular, very, very wide hips, very wide shoulders. So they were stronger than us. Okay. We, for whatever reason, were more intelligent.
Yes. When you go to the museums, their average height was around 5'4" to 5'6" for males. That's 162 centimeters to 168. And females, not far off, actually. There wasn't as big a height differential as there is in modern day. Average height for females was 5'2", so around 152 to 156 centimeters.
So stocky, muscular, strong, not as linguistically capable as we were, but intelligent. So very, very capable, very successful hunters as well.
Sorry to interrupt. The art that was found in the Spanish cave in the north of the Bulls, was that done by Neanderthals or by Homo sapiens? Then?
It was 25,000 years ago, therefore that must have been Homo sapien.
Okay.
However, that leads us to the other site I want to talk about today, which is the Sierra de Atapuerca, the Atapuerca mountain range. So, 16 kilometers east of the medieval city of Burgos, which lies on the Camino de Santiago, famous home of El Cid.
Nice.
We have the Sierra de Atapuerca. These are a 1,822 meter high at the summit mountain range, 7 kilometers long, so not a particularly big mountain range, but they became, in year 2000, a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of what has been discovered there. In the early 60s, so this was still during Franco's reign, I think 61, 62, somebody was cutting through the rock to build a train line, and they came upon a huge amount of bones, of skeletons. In 1964, the formal excavation of the Sierra de Atapuerca was led by Francisco Jorda Cerda, and it became what is now the biggest abundance of early human remains that has been discovered anywhere in the world, and it's here in Spain.
Wow.
The Sierra de Atapuerca. There are 4 sites that have proved a treasure test of understanding early human evolution and migration into Europe. Those are the Grandolina, the Cima del Elefante, the Pit of the Elephants, Cueva del Silio, and La Cueva Mayor, obviously the big cave, in which we have what's called the Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones.
So this is 4 different sites along one mountain range.
4 different shafts, different caves inside the Sierra, where we found a huge amount of fossilized bones.
Amazing.
It is the most dense concentration of proto-human remains ever found in the world.
Wow.
We see our earliest evidence of hominid cannibalism here as well.
Delicious. Berico ham.
Original ham on.
It also gives us the oldest evidence of known human settlement of the Homo genus in Western Europe. I'd said that the Homo Antecessor was discovered in this location.
Yeah.
Since then, we have found a 1.4 million year old jawbone fossil with a tooth included that belonged to, I think, Homo erectus.
1.4 million.
Yes. That is the oldest thing found in the Sierra de Atapuerca, and I believe in Europe, I will check that fact.
Amazing.
Yeah. Wow. Go on.
No, I guess my question is here. So if we're talking 1.4 million, this is even before the Neanderthals, no?
Correct.
Like way before. This is like really like basic.
Yeah.
So, but what's this Homo erectus?
That we believe that was Homo erectus. Because there's only a bit of a jawbone and a tooth, and you can kind of work out by creating simulations of what the full skull would look like, and we believe it's Homo erectus.
And so they had burial sites, which was either religious or just Because
That's not clear from this fossil. We found a bunch of dead skeletons inside there, basically.
Yeah.
This one is not believed to have been buried there. It's just a jaw we found in this particular location.
Sorry. Okay.
But we see Homo Antecessor, Neanderthals, and Homo Heidelbergensis in huge amounts in this place, and we do believe part of that would have been burial rites.
Amazing.
But some of them also just, they would have been victims of violence, and therefore shove the bones in a convenient place. Or, you've got a tasty human you can start eating on, keep it for later. So
why not? Yeah, reserved.
The fact that we see a huge amount of bones and skeletons from different eras inside these caves is indicative of how good they were at being a place for settlement and residence for early humans in this region. We'll get to why in a second. I will just say this, though. The Cima de los Huesos inside Cueva Mayor, which is the biggest deposit of early human remains we've ever found in the world, a 30-meter shaft going down, and we see 28 individual skeletons of both sexes of Homo heidelbergensis, and a total of 5,500 skeletal remains inside this pit alone. So, like I said, nowhere else in the world has given us as many fossilized remains of early humans as this area.
5,500 independent skeletons, isn't that?
No, bone fragments.
Okay, all right.
We found 28 complete skeletons of Homo heidelbergensis. So that would have been 500,000 years ago. But we've got bone fragments of 8. That's just in one of the 4 pits as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing when you think of the time scale, because that means that area would have been so habitable from all the way back to Homo erectus so almost, you're talking about 800,000 years, basically, where humans, even now, none of us inhabit the area that long. You look at the UK and Europe and these parts, people aren't inhabiting places that long.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see another 800,000 years. Will we be in the same place? If you think of the scale of that, that's fascinating. That they were in that particular region for that amount of time.
That links to the big conclusion, the big answer. What caused them to move there and what was the ultimate demise of these proto-human species. But let's just take a moment, before we get to Homo sapiens, just to ponder on what life might have been like for the Homo Antecessor, Homo Heidelbergensis, and Neanderthals in Spain 500,000 years ago. So there would have been abundant prey. There were bison, bulls, rabbits, which we discovered in the previous episode, are endemic to the Iberian Peninsula, lynxes, all this sort of thing. Enough food. These people were migratory, so they wouldn't have settled. And there was no agriculture. This came later because the climate was cold, it was tough, and there were not many opportunities to deliberately germinate plants and put them in certain places to allow grow. So people depended on hunting and, foraging berries and apples, that sort of thing.
Hunter-gatherers, literally.
What about mammoths? Would there be mammoths back then?
Mammoths, I think, were endemic to the Americas. I don't know if they were in Eurasia. I might be wrong, but we can look that up. But I think they were on the American continent.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Homo erectus were the first hominins to leave Africa. That's why they ended up migrating to this area, because of climate change.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. Similarly, Neanderthals, Homo heidelbergensis, and Homo antecessor lived across the Iberian Peninsula rather than sticking to one particular place. And they had a good amount of calories and reasonable diet, we think. Non-static populations, of course, meant lower risk of disease pandemics, which came later with the advent of civilization and people sticking in one location nearby, usually a stagnant water source. And Crash Course, again, that I quoted earlier, suggested that anthropologists believe that there was approximately a 10% murder rate among these hominid groups.
Wow.
Jesus, okay.
It's quite low, actually, if you think about the primitive nature of their civilization.
Successful murder rate.
Yeah. If you can have that. Yeah, it's probably about the same as America.
But by 25,000 years ago, we know Homo heidelbergensis and Neanderthals had died out entirely in Europe. Like we said, the last ever remains found in Gibraltar that time. What happened? Cue the introduction of
Neanderthals.
Homo sapiens.
Sapiens.
Just testing you there. I was just testing you there.
What do you guys know? How do we define Homo sapiens? What are the characteristics evolutionarily and physiologically that define us?
Physically, you mean, or?
Yes, was that physically? Yes.
I mean, I guess we're slightly taller. Well, now we are, I guess. Slightly taller, more nimble, less hairy.
True.
Yeah.
don't know what physical. We talked about the skull aspects. No, that
Correct.
obviously for the brain to be in that different shape for the different thinking. Are we more focused on communal aspects?
We'll get to that. We'll stay with the physical description
Okay.
of Homo sapiens first. Max, what do you know? What can you contribute?
This is the thing. When it comes to Homo sapiens, very, very similar, slightly different skull size. So more closely, well,
It does. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I wouldn't say me so much. We're close to Neanderthals with the back base of the skull, a greater development of frontal lobe activity. This is where things like the medulla oblongata started to develop in humans, and spatial reasoning, spatial awareness. Again, frontal lobe development correlated with social cohesion. This is where the introduction of language starts to come into play. Words, sounds, greater communication.
Facilitated by the development of
Vocal cords.
The larynx.
the larynx. Spot on. One of the key things we see in Homo sapiens for the first time, the high larynx, allowing us to produce a greater amount of vocalizations.
So what is a larynx? Sorry.
It's not exactly the voice box, but it's kind of I think,
just above the
pharynx. It's the system of muscles and tendons that kind of hold the esophagus, the trachea, the voice box, the Adam's apple in place. That's my understanding. I asked my sister, and she didn't give me a bloody good answer, so now I'm fluffing it on the fly during the actual recording, but never mind.
So what you're saying is the first time that, Homo sapiens, I guess, had some sort of communication, whether kind of purely, but it wasn't actually a language, was it? Or just like...
A language evolved, but there was no Homo genius before us that could make as wide a variety of sounds that we can out of our mouths.
Interesting.
Which gives us a huge ability to express complex ideas quickly that can be understood and interpreted. You both hit it on the head with regards to skull shape being rounder, being slightly narrower. So we had actually smaller brains, like we said, than Neanderthals, but a more round dome gives our brains the ability to develop in a way that facilitates the understanding of language, the creation of complex ideas, good memory, spatial awareness, which gives a survival advantage. The more physical features, we have flatter faces and that are more under our foreheads compared to the Neanderthal and Homo Heidelbergensis. Less muscle, lower bone density, shorter relative limbs compared to the previous Homo genuses. Have you got a point?
Yeah, it was the presence of the pronounced chin, which is interesting as well. It was our chin and teeth development, which allowed the larynx to grow even bigger.
Didn't know that.
And increased our sounds. Yeah.
This makes a lot of sense because you two have got very prominent chins.
Yes.
And you are very good at communicating.
Yes.
Whereas I have a head shaped like a balloon and I can barely speak. So
a slightly less robust chin.
Yeah, slightly is an
which
understatement.
makes speaking Spanish more difficult.
Actually, very
language experts have correlated that Japanese and Spanish lends itself to the underbite. Those of an underbite have an easier time speaking Spanish.
Ah, interesting.
Because of the teeth and tongue position.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. There we go. That's for everyone out there that knows how shit I am at Spanish. I've got a scientific DNA reason for why right now.
Take it to the chin.
Hey!
Best estimates place the arrival of Homo sapiens at about 150,000 years ago in southern and eastern Africa. Though it's possible we've been walking around for 250,000 years, which would be 250,000 years. About 70,000 years ago, we see East and Southern Africa becoming warmer and wetter. This was more conducive to hunting and gathering, which allowed the Homo sapiens population to begin to grow beyond the numbers we had seen previously. Migration followed, firstly to Somalia, then across what is now the Red Sea to the Arabian Peninsula, through to Iran, and from there, Homo sapiens colonized pretty much every single corner of Eurasia. One small thing, the last shared common female ancestor we all have lived 150,000 years ago, so that would have been in East Africa. The last common male ancestor is 60,000 years old. So our oldest shared father is way younger than our mother.
Wow.
Okay.
Because there are, of all Homo sapiens that have previously lived, more women were able to reproduce than men, but the men that did reproduce had more children.
Interesting.
So, we know what Homo sapiens is, we know what they are capable of, we know some of us have fantastic chins, whereas some of us do not. Why was Homo sapiens able to dominate Europe and push Homo Heidelbergensis and the Neanderthals out of Europe, out of Spain, and the entire world? Now, we have very little fossil evidence of Homo anything between 190,000 to 90,000 years over the world. Why might that be the case in this particular period?
Why did they dominate?
There's very little evidence from 90,000 years ago to 90,000 years ago.
Was
give or
there
take.
some sort of ice age?
Correct. Spot on.
Oh,
That is it. There was a global ice age in that period, which meant survival for anything was a lot tougher. However, those conditions, the relative scarcity of food and resources and the more difficult conditions of just surviving in that time, favoured the evolution of a Homo that was able to solve problems and communicate them and share new ideas with their offspring, with their kin, more effectively. This favoured the evolution of Homo sapiens in spite of our lower muscle mass and our lower bone density.
So effectively, we could communicate survival instincts, habitats. We could
Correct.
speak as a group to try to survive.
The Neanderthals' ability to wrestle and punch doesn't really, you can't punch a glacier to knock food out of it.
What was the temperatures like in the ice age?
Minus 14 degrees Fahrenheit lower than what we have now on average.
So just minus 14 daily.
Minus 14 degrees lower than what we have now on average. Yeah.
On average,
okay.
Which is really cold, though. Could go down to minus 70.
How did these guys survive that? It's amazing.
During the last big ice age, game, so reindeer, moose, bison, as we discussed, migrated frequently from northern Europe to the south for the winter. And this is what the various Homo genuses during this era would hunt. And a geological abnormality in Spain and France means that there is a disproportionate abundance of limestone. The thing about limestone, it's porous, I believe. It is relatively weak. It can be eroded quite easily. So the exposure to wind, to rain, to water, to glaciers means that Spain and France, therefore, have an extraordinarily high amount of inland caves.
Oh.
There are way more dry inland caves in France and Spain than almost anywhere else you will find in the world because of the abundance of limestone.
I wonder if they kind of naturally created, this is maybe a stupid remark, but naturally created like roads, like if there'd be a year upon year migration of either the animals coming down, they find one and
there would be a natural creation of roads.
Something like that, yeah. Like, in that sense.
And Homo sapiens would have figured this out.
Yeah.
They would have
waiting for them.
Yeah, that is exactly how they survived. They used these caves to live and to settle during the winter when the large game would be there. That's what they would hunt. We think they were able to out-hunt Homo Heidelbergensis and the Neanderthals. And this is also going back, why France and Spain have an abundance of cave paintings, more than anywhere else in the world.
Wow.
That's the reason why. 3 best sites in Spain, Cueva de Lieja, we see archers hunting stags painted on the walls, Altamira, which we discussed at the beginning of Santander, bison and wild boar, and Cueva de la Pileta, which is next to Ronda, a place with a huge amount of caves. We see panthers, of all things.
Panthers?
Yeah,
wow,
which I didn't know they were native to Europe, but...
No.
Yep.
That's new.
We see goat paintings and fish.
Amazing, okay.
The thing is, in that part of Spain, that part of Andalusia, people still live in caves. Have you guys been to Granada before?
Never.
In 1963, 15% of people were still living in caves in Granada.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
15% of people.
Amazing.
In
1963.
What about today?
I couldn't find a figure for today, but a company that I worked for when I did my internship in the south of Spain, they had an office in Granada, and part of it was built into the side of a cave.
Wow.
Honest to God.
In 1963, 15% of the population of Granada was living in caves.
Yes.
That can't be true.
That's amazing.
Honest to God.
That's amazing.
If you go to Granada, you should visit the neighborhood of Sagramonte, I think it's called.
Okay.
I think it's the northern part of the city. And it is basically, that's where the outcast people during the Third Republic, during the Franco era, these were the Roma, these were the Sinti, these were the Gypsies. That's where they would live.
Yeah.
And it is believed this is where flamenco came from. They believe that's the birthplace, because these people, with their outlaw traditions and customs and culture, that was where they dwelled.
Echoey space for a bit of music to, sound
quite
system
possibly.
around.
Early podcasts.
There we go. Yeah, true. Yeah.
Early podcasts in the caves of Granada.
So there we go. And 11 to 10,000 years ago, we believe the last ice age retreated in Europe. By this time, only Homo sapiens was left, the only Homo genus, I believe, in the entire world. There were late discoveries of what we think are relatives of Homo erectus in Indonesia, in the islands of Flores, and that's the kind of more far-flung islands in the archipelago. I don't know the dates, but 10,000 years ago, it was only Homo sapiens left. It was around this time that they invented agriculture.
Yeah, okay.
About 15,000 years ago.
Agriculture's only about 15,000 years.
Yes.
Because like nothing of like for the human history, no,
Yeah.
or whatever you define as human, I guess.
So recent. With the agricultural revolution, we think 15,000 years ago, probably Mesopotamia. By 9,000 years, this had spread across the Levant, the hilly flank of northern Syria, and probably Anatolia. The benefit of agriculture: food surplus.
Yep.
Means you can attract more people.
Mm.
The fact that one person can make enough food for three means you can have the other two doing something else, which leads to the specialization of labor, and i.e. jobs, which you can have one person accounting for it, which means you need someone to write things down. And this is where the invention of language, written language, organized, structured, codified language comes in.
15,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Primitive task delegation. Primitive task delegation.
It's your job to pick things. You can be a soldier. You can be an administrator, an accountant. You can be someone who makes tools for us to make this thing. It's your job to make the irrigation work so that we can have water bleed.
So there must have been a social hierarchy as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
And this is why this is what we call the beginning of civilization, the beginning of history. As
there we go.
call it. Exactly.
The transition.
Because politics begin at this stage.
So history is. I mean, I feel a bit sorry for the old Neanderthals that have been around, or the Homo whatever it was that's around for like 150,000 years. They're like, we survived this entire period, but right, just because we can't count, you're sacking us off. History doesn't count for us.
That's why we are honouring them right now with this podcast.
The same will happen to us in the future.
Yeah, true. They weren't cyborgs.
Nope.
We think as the Ice Age ended about 10,000 years ago, Europe got warmer. And I think slightly wetter, more carbon dioxide in the air as well, because it wasn't locked in ice, means that actually plants could flourish a lot more, which facilitated agriculture. So
Amazing.
Agriculture would have spread from the Levant to the Mediterranean world probably about 6,000 years ago, we think. And in the Neolithic period, we see examples of settlements with fortifications, irrigation, working tools, and sites resembling rituals and religious activity. That is to say, that societies and settlements arrived in Spain around 6,000 years ago.
Okay.
So this is where the first evidence of people staying in one place and trying to survive.
As in like creating little villages and towns and yeah. That's their place. They're not on the move anymore.
Correct.
They're staying there.
They have their fields next door. They will be breeding cattle, chickens, cows, pigs, whatever it may be. As of that age, we can say human civilization, human history began in Spain.
Amazing, yeah.
Then came the Bronze Age between 2,300 BC and 1,500 BC. Northwest Spain has some of the largest tin deposits in the world. Tin, of course, being a fundamental material used to make bronze. And with the discovery of a huge amount of tin in the Bronze Age in Spain, led to the introduction of what we can describe as the first foreign civilization colonizing the Iberian Peninsula, which was the
Greeks.
No,
Romans.
Before Romans. Greeks was closer.
Mesopotamians, no.
Yeah, that's what I don't know.
In between Mesopotamia and Greece, if that makes sense.
I don't know. I'm gonna
Phoenicians.
It's the
Phoenicians
Phoenicians.
from
The Venetians.
what we now call Lebanon were very,
Greece.
very enterprising and very good sailors across the Mediterranean, set up many different settlements. Marseille, I think, many in Greece, and Cadiz. The first, what we can now call the oldest city of Spain, Gadir, was the name, which has migrated through, I think the Moorish word was Cadiz, and that's become Cadiz nowadays in the Spanish language. And that, I think, is where we end the history. That's the story of early human being activity in the Iberian Peninsula.
Wow. I love it. Really
Amazing.
interesting. So you know why it's called Iberia?
I do.
Let's see if your facts are the same as
It
mine.
is a manipulation, or it is a corruption of the Roman word, what was the Ebro?
Greek.
The Ebro River.
I heard Greek.
Greek,
word.
okay, forgive me.
Greek word, yeah.
The Ebro River became Iber, and
Absolutely.
then Iberian is where we get the word from.
And that's why I read about as well.
The Sierra de Atapuerca, 60 kilometers, I think, to the east of Burgos, a city I visited this year, and I got this inspiration. They got the idea for this podcast from the Museo de la Evolución Humana, which is the Human Evolution Museum in Burgos, and I cannot sing its praises enough. It is a fantastic museum, interactive, informative, absolutely beautiful. And if anyone is looking for a good alternative museum to visit in the centre of Spain, that is, without shadow of doubt, my recommendation. Gentlemen, I would like to know what musea in Spain you are advocates for.
Are we talking history museums now?
No, any museum that you think is outstanding in
museum.
Spain.
Oh, in Spain. Well, I have to admit, my knowledge is relatively to Barcelona. I don't know the official name, but I really like it. I really like the boat museum down by the port in near Raval slash
Maritime Museum,
yeah,
is it?
the Maritime Museum.
Museum
They've
is
got
very
the
fun.
super
Yeah,
cool, the massive Spanish galley. No,
yeah,
super
huge
beautiful.
gallery.
I love that. Yeah,
I
really
love
nice.
that.
Yeah, so that's my top tip to the listeners out there. The Maritime Museum. That's the one.
I don't think I've been to it.
Really nice. Eh?
Is it the one you've got like a big sort of square building, quite tall, made of real small brick, and it's got like arches underneath it? Is it
Yeah,
that? Is it
yeah.
there?
It's next
Right.
to it, and it's next to where they've just reformed the bottom of La Rambla. La Rambla.
Oh,
And it's
I
yeah.
know the
and
building.
you walk past it, and you can
Yes.
even see the
Yeah.
like this old Spanish galley. I'd really recommend it. It's super, just for like an afternoon on a
I know the
Sunday.
one. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
For me, it is a no-brainer. I've been to quite a few museums in Spain and Barcelona, and recently I went to the Cosmo Caixa Museum of Science. At the top near, you get the bus to Tibidabo and stop up there. And I love a science museum anyway. Fantastic things on quantum physics, amazing little challenges here and there. If you want an extra tip, go just to see if you can spot where the frogs are hiding. You'll know the exhibition when you see it. It's incredibly difficult to camouflage frogs. And there's even a little aquarium in there as well with
Yes.
caimans.
amazing.
Yeah, it's got everything.
A science museum dedicated to engineering or biology.
It's got everything. This is the thing. Whereas, say, you've got other museums, London Museum, quite specific. There's a quantum physics section, there's a prehistoric section, and then there's just modern day animals. Seeing the size of animals, there's a replica of a sperm whale, so you can get a grand scale of how big they are. And there's a huge swinging pendulum, which is quite hypnotizing if you're
I
tired.
don't know where you're going with after saying sperm whale with huge swinging.
There was a huge sperm whale with a giant swinging pendulum.
You can
next
tell
to it.
it's the Neanderthalness of the three of us, right?
But we'll stop it there before the cannibalism starts.
Yeah,
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for your time. Have you enjoyed this?
loved it. Absolutely loved it. Very educational.
Fantastic.
Plugged some gaps in my knowledge.
Yeah, had a great time. Can't wait for the next one.
Anytime, gentlemen.
Thanks, Alex.
What are you going to plug in the podcast? Are you not plugging anything at the moment?
In terms of
I mean, what's the point of a podcast?
somebody
about
else's
blogging?
business?
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of podcasts? That's what they're all about. Every podcast I ever listen to, they're plugging
El
something.
Kubo, 9:30.
Or Andy Morris Barbershop, Tuesdays.
Come to Jokes and Beers every Saturday night at 9 p.m.
I like Hull City, and you should too. That's what I'm going to plug.
There
Hull
we
City.
go.
Thanks, boys, and thank you too for listening, guys. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Hispanophiles Travel in Spain with only half a brain. We're going to go now, get back in the time machine, fast forward to the present, and it's time for some swinging pendulum action. See you boys later.
For the listeners out there. James is just catching up on some interesting things.
No, I was on the wrong side, but we've actually covered most of that very well.
Yeah,
I just didn't mention when Homo sapiens
I
was
just tell the listeners the truth. He's out there. He's having a posh